This is KATU News at 11 on your side.
In less than 12 hours, a major coronavirus announcement is coming from Washington Governor Jay Inslee. This as the state hits a new daily record. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Catherine Kissel. Today, the Washington Department of Health announced 2,233 new cases, shattering the record set just the day before and the day before that. Governor Inslee is expected to announce new restrictions to combat the alarming rise of coronavirus cases in the state. So here's what we found. According to a letter from the Washington Food Industry Association, the governor will announce restaurants and bars will close for indoor service. Outdoor dining and to-go services will still be allowed. This will all go into effect on Wednesday. The letter says indoor social gatherings with people outside of your home are banned. Outdoor gatherings are limited to only 5 people not in your household, and gyms will close unless there are outdoor classes. These restrictions would go into effect just after midnight Tuesday morning. This comes just a few days after Oregon Governor Kate Brown announced a similar 2-week freeze for the entire state. That goes into effect Wednesday, November 18th. Once again, Oregon's daily case count was more than 1,000. The 2-week freeze was announced after a record-breaking amount of cases set Thursday. Health professionals aren't just concerned about the soaring number of cases, but they are worried that the ways people are coping with these new restrictions. KATU's Allison Mechanic joins us live. And Allison, what are they so worried about?
Well, Catherine, they're worried because the last time we went into something similar like this, people didn't adjust well. You can see restaurants all over Portland have started to adjust to this freeze period, taking in their tables that people would normally be enjoying. We saw one study that says 76% of Americans gained 16 pounds since March, and that can be dangerous for people's long-term health. With restaurants and other businesses closing back down, psychologists say now is the time to start preparing if last March was hard for you.
Life before the pandemic may feel farther away than ever. Oregon is just days away from entering a 2-week freeze, similar to what we experienced in March. As restaurants and businesses begin to transition to follow new restrictions, mental health professionals are urging people to prepare as well.
More than ever, it's really important to establish a routine so that you have some consistency and that it doesn't just feel like this blob that's never going to end.
In March, Governor Brown announced stay-at-home orders. A Nutrisystem study says 76% of Americans gained 16 pounds since March. While emotional eating is a way to cope, it can come with some serious complications.
You are going to see a bump or at least increased incidence of comorbid conditions such as hypertension, diabetes, heart disease. And of course, you're not going to see it next month or the month after, but it would definitely make an impact on the future years.
Mental health professionals aren't surprised by the increase, but are also concerned.
I know that the number of referrals that we're getting for our eating disorders program have gone through the roof during this pandemic.
To feel some sense of normalcy during this freeze period, they suggest getting in a routine, exercising, and finding unique ways to connect with people. While it's not the same as life before the pandemic, it's a way to make this difficult time easier.
Now, if you're feeling anxious ahead of this 2-week freeze period, psychologists say now is a good time to get in touch with your primary care doctor or another health professional to see what you can do to make yourself feel easier during this time. In Northwest Portland, Allison Mechanic, KATU News.
Good advice, Allison. Thank you. Meanwhile, we want to show you the line for coronavirus testing in Seattle today. Cars were lined up down the block waiting to get a test. Health experts say the speed of the spread is an issue. Transmission rates are increasing throughout the area. KATU's Nick Popham reports on the latest look at COVID in our state.
This isn't where health experts wanted us to be in the middle of November.
This is just a really difficult period.
Case counts currently dwarf the amount we saw in the spring, and hospitalizations are on the rise and are expected to continue to do so in the coming weeks. Even with a 2-week delay, as of October 30th, transmission rates in Western Washington are at 1.4. Doctors want that number to be below 1. According to those physicians, most of these new cases are coming from small gatherings indoors.
It is low grade, but very widespread transmission.
With more people getting the virus, more folks are waiting in line to see if they too are infected. Test sites like this one in Snohomish County were packed at the end of this week, and sites like the one in Sodo had cars down the block waiting for a nasal swab. That site is booked with appointments for the rest of this upcoming week.
We have to hit the brakes. We cannot afford to overwhelm our hospitals.
Dr. Ali Mogdad anticipates more restrictions will be coming shortly, but doesn't think it needs to be as drastic as what we saw in the spring.
Short of a total lockdown, which we want to avoid, all of us, let's have these selective shutdowns and sacrifice certain things in order to keep the others running.
Well, Dr. Chen thinks drastic measures may be necessary.
I'm not convinced that taking small steps is going to work right now. We really need a reset.
That was Nick Popham reporting. With new restrictions going into effect in the coming week, Washington Emergency Management is asking people not to panic buy. They say that buying in bulk doesn't help anyone. Several grocery stores are already setting limits to prevent people from hoarding supplies. And as cases rise, health officials are asking people to either tone down their Thanksgiving plans or cancel them outright. For some, that can be a hard conversation to have with family. Mental health experts say the best option is to just be honest.
I would tackle this conversation by just going right on in it. Starting out with we're in lockdown, we're not going to be able to travel this year. So how can we still all be together virtually and have a good time and make it fun? And that's probably the easiest way than beating around the bush.
And stay with KATU News for all the latest updates surrounding the pandemic. We'll have everything you need to know on Governor Inslee's address tomorrow on KATU News at 5, 6, and 11. And when we're not on the air, you can go to KATU.com as well as our social media pages. We had very active weather today in Oregon. We saw king tides on the coast and snow at Mount Hood and gloomy skies in Portland. KATU's Joe English is in the Weather Center now with an update for us. Hi, Joe.
And things are changing. That's the update. Overnight, we're going to see less rain. The wind is calming down and the snow levels are rising. We're about 5, even 10 degrees warmer right now west of the Cascades than we were 24 hours ago. Still a little chillier on the east side of the mountains, but that will change as well. Want to point out a couple of things to you. High wind warning on the southern coast until 4 o'clock in the morning. Same story for south central Oregon. And a winter weather advisory for the Cascades until 2 o'clock Sunday morning, but 10 o'clock in the morning tomorrow for northeast Oregon. So that's where the weather is going. You can see on this map, wind really not blowing much other than the very southern tip of the Oregon coast. And there's the rain and the snow that we had today. Now watch as it moves down to the south. It wears out. What we're dealing with now, just some scattered showers. Snow off to the east side, and the snow level up around 6,000 feet tonight. That's Timberline Lodge, and then dropping down to above the passes tomorrow. So still several inches of snow in the higher elevations of the mountain tonight, and then maybe near the passes tomorrow. And then we're going to see things warm up. Here's what you can expect around Portland and Vancouver. Showers for Sunday, warmer temperatures, about 10-degree warmers for high temperatures on Sunday. And then more rain coming in Monday morning, and there's more after that once again. So we'll talk all about that coming up in your complete forecast.
All right, Joe, thank you. President Trump is putting his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, in charge of his campaign's legal battles. That's according to the New York Times. The decision comes after 9 cases were dropped or denied yesterday. The Trump campaign advisor was leading the effort, but he's not a lawyer and he's tested positive for the virus. Meanwhile, the head of cybersecurity for the Department of Homeland Security says misinformation is spreading rapidly online. He tweeted today in response to rumors that election-related servers were recently seized in Europe. He says that that's not true and is warning the public not to buy into false information. A Black Lives Matter demonstration in Vancouver was met with counter-protesters tonight. The group met in Esther Short Park, but soon after, an opposing group arrived and several were carrying guns. Our crew on the scene says that things remain peaceful. And a protest in Washington, D.C. ended tonight with 20 arrests and 1 person was stabbed. 2 officers were also hurt. Some crowds were protesting against the results of the election, calling it the Million MAGA March. National correspondent Atra Elnashar was there, and she has how it all unfolded.
Supporters of President Trump crowding the streets between Freedom Plaza and the U.S. Supreme Court. traveling to the nation's capital from across the country.
We drove 16 hours straight.
I'm from the Finger Lakes in New York.
President Trump retweeting a photo of the crowd, writing, "People are not going to stand for having this election stolen from them." Earlier in the day, making an appearance in his motorcade, waving to people who support his unproven claims.
I hope this guy is really straight with his word. I'm not leaving until I fight and fight and fight.
But on Thursday, a federal election oversight agency called the November 3rd election the most secure in American history, finding no evidence of widespread fraud. This counter-protester from Virginia tells Sinclair he came out partly because he's angry to see people ignoring the pandemic and backing the president's claims about the election.
They are the minority. As the minority, they've been in power for 4 years. It's hard to give up power.
Later in the day, confrontations between supporters of the president and counter-protesters. Now, for most of the day on Saturday, things were lively but peaceful. But then as protesters and counter-protesters collided, we saw some fights break out, some arrests. And now here outside of the White House at Black Lives Matter Plaza, you can see police lined up blocking the streets, trying to prevent any more tension. Exactly 1 week after the election was called for President-elect Joe Biden, this unrest unfolding between a divided electorate, with very different views of what the next 4 years will bring. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar reporting.
There is a renewed push to get the acting Homeland Security Secretary confirmed before Inauguration Day. Chad Wolf has been acting secretary for a year now. Officials have reportedly spoken with House Speaker Mitch McConnell about bringing the nomination to a floor vote. The move seems to acknowledge that a new administration would not recognize Wolf's appointment as valid unless he was confirmed by the Senate. This renewed push comes as today as a federal judge in New York has ruled that Wolf assumed his position unlawfully. The judge says that DHS did not follow the order of succession correctly, and therefore actions taken by Wolf didn't have legal authority. That ruling is significant for DACA recipients as it now invalidates Wolf's suspension of the program, which protects children and young adults from deportation. Still ahead on KATU News at 11, a message from a daughter who just lost her father to the virus.
Until you watch someone die in a hospital bed, you don't take it seriously.
More on her plea when we come back. And COVID brain. Doctors say it could be one of the long-term effects of the virus and how they're working to treat it when we come back.